agencies and fraudsters accountable. Representative Robbins is also co-chair of the bipartisan bicameral Civility Caucus, which aims to build relationships and trust across parties and between the House and Senate. Prior to joining the House in 2018, Representative Robbins co-founded and served as the executive director of the Economic Club of Minnesota, a nonprofit focused on strengthening Minnesota's economic competitiveness, and previously served on the State Commission to End Chronic Homelessness. She received her bachelor's degree in economics and political science from Bethel University and her master's degree in economics from Washington University. Our second witness is Robert Weissman, who is the co-president of Public Citizen, the consumer advocacy and pro-democracy organization. Weissman focuses on government and corporate accountability, among other issues. He is the author of The Corporate Sabotage of America's Future and the co-author of 2 other books. Previously, he worked as director of the corporate accountability organization Essential Action and as editor of the Multinational Monitor, a magazine that tracks multinational corporations. Weissman is a graduate of Harvard College and the Harvard Law School, a fact for which I hope we can forgive him. Our final witness is David Hoke. David Hoke is most well known for his role as the Minneapolis whistleblower in YouTuber Nick Shirley's video uncovering massive fraud within Minnesota's Somali community. Mr. Hoke was born and raised in Minnesota, where he attended the University of Minnesota and ran for Attorney General in 2010. As an investigator, he has devoted considerable time and resources over the last several decades to scrutinizing Minnesota's elected official and exposing corruption. He co-founded Minnesotans for Responsible Government, where he serves as a lobbyist. And we'll start now. Representative Robbins, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for inviting me to testify as chair of the Fraud Prevention and Oversight Committee in the House. I've been working tirelessly over the past year to expose the massive fraud that Tim Walz and his administration has enabled. We've also proposed solutions and worked to hold state agencies and criminals accountable. We have a long way to go, but we are getting results. With my brief remarks, I want to highlight 3 things: how this started, where the money is going, and provide a roadmap for how states can prevent fraud and we can partner better with the federal government. First, how it started. The original fraud scandal was tied to the Child Care Assistance Program, or CCAP, which is a federal program for low-income families with children. There had been allegations of fraud in this program since 2011. By 2014 and 15, there were raids, charges, and convictions of child care providers for billing non-existent or absent children, with fraud exceeding $1 million in some cases. In March and April of 2019, just a few months into the Walz administration, the Legislative Office Auditor published 2 reports about the CCAP fraud. They outlined the fraudulent providers and the alleged movement of millions of dollars in cash out of our state to Somalia, with allegations that the money was going to fund terrorism. Unfortunately, according to multiple whistleblowers, soon after these reports were released, the Criminal Investigation Unit for Child Care Fraud, which had been leading the charge on these prosecutions, was shut down by the Department of Human Services. Rather than conducting criminal investigations of fraud, the Walz administration essentially renamed fraud as overpayment, and they referred any overpayment cases to a new internal overpayment committee, which would decide if they should pursue reimbursement. The DHS staff in this unit were no longer allowed to talk to their counterparts in the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension without prior supervisor approval. Failure to address child care fraud and the decision to stop criminal investigations led directly to the largest COVID fraud scandal in the nation. In March of 2020, Representative Ilhan Omar authored a bill called the Meals Act, which eventually was incorporated into a larger COVID package. This law enabled states to waive the normal eligibility requirements for participating in the National School Lunch Program, eliminating income requirements, site inspections, and expanded distribution methods. Minnesota took full advantage of these waivers and enabled site sponsors like Feeding Our Future, Partners in Quality Care, and Gargar Family Services to bill for hundreds of millions of fake meals for fake children. Just one of these groups, Feeding Our Future, became the largest COVID fraud in state and national history, bilking taxpayers of at least $250 million. To date, there have been 78 indictments and 61 convictions in the Feeding Our Future scandal, with more cases to go on trial this spring. The Feeding Our Future prosecutions then revealed that as many as half of those defendants were also getting state money in other Medicaid-funded programs. Yet despite reports on this back in 2023, more than 3 years ago, Tim Walz and his agencies didn't stop those defendants from getting additional state money in other Medicaid programs. We now have found fraud in multiple Medicaid programs, including autism centers, sober homes, non-emergency medical transportation, integrated community supports, and housing stabilization services. In December, our committee held a hearing on credible allegations of fraud in 2 new areas: adult day services and assisted living facilities. We now have seen allegations of fraud in 14 Medicaid programs. The former first U.S. attorney who led these prosecutions for years stated that the estimated fraud is $9 billion. And this doesn't count fraud in SNAP or child care programs. So where's the money going? Minnesotans pay their taxes and they expect their money to go to things that help their communities: roads, schools, health care, and not to be taken by criminals, to buy resorts in Kenya, apartments in Nairobi, property in Turkey, or luxury homes and cars in the U.S. Worse yet, Minnesota taxpayers have allegedly found their ways into the hands of terrorist organizations like Al-Shabaab, both directly and indirectly. The money is walking out the door at the Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport. Back in 2017, the estimate was about $100 million in cash was going out annually from our airport. According to TSA, in 2024, there were $340 million in cash outbound, and in 2025, it was $350 million. This is astonishing, not only because of the amount, but because it is so out of proportion to other airports. The cash out of Minneapolis is 99% higher than cash going out of Dallas, Atlanta, and JFK in New York. It's 90% higher than what's going out of Seattle. Minnesotans are incredibly frustrated that their hard-earned money is being siphoned off by criminals while their taxes keep going up and vulnerable citizens don't get the services they need. Other states should learn from our failures. There are some basic common sense principles to stop the fraud. First, culture matters. Fraud flourishes when leaders ignore it and criminals see they can get away with it. Tim Walz has not held anyone responsible. Second, fraud flourishes when basic internal controls are not followed. This is not complicated. Third, truth matters. We cannot be cowed by charges of racism or Islamophobia, which have been successfully weaponized to limit scrutiny and fraud in Minnesota for years. This is not ancient history. It is still happening. When I testified before the House Oversight Committee on January 7th, I was stunned to be called a racist 6 times in that hearing. This is the same playbook that has been used to protect Minnesota criminals for years. Anytime a whistleblower or legislator raised questions about Somali fraud in daycares, nutrition centers, autism centers, they were called a racist or said that charges of racism would ruin their careers. So where do we go from here? State and federal partners work together. We need your help to have more audits of these programs and to enforce current laws that require states to pay back in 1 year if they have been found fraud or overpayment. We also need the federal government to require documentation, not just attestation, for eligibility in these programs. We also need more resources at the U.S. Attorney's Office and CMS to help with investigations. And finally, the federal government should have greater power of oversight and investigation of cash going out of our country. I'm thankful for the brave whistleblowers, journalists, and the federal and state partners in this committee for helping us identify fraud. We cannot allow this to continue. The time for accountability and justice is now.
Ms. Wiseman.